The call comes on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic call, no encrypted phone, no black car pulling up outside. Just his supervisor leaning into his cubicle at Langley and saying quietly that there's a meeting at 2 o'clock and he should bring nothing with him. No notepad, no phone, just himself. He'd been with the agency for 11 years by then. Long enough to know that when they tell you to bring nothing, you're about to be handed everything. The room has 4 people in it when he arrives. 2 he recognizes from the Special Activities Center. 1 is a woman he's never seen before, mid-40s, no introduction given. The 4th is a psychologist, he knows the type by now, the way they sit slightly sideways, like they're already evaluating your posture before you've said a word. There are no pleasantries. The woman slides a folder across the table. He opens it. He reads it once, then closes it. How long? He asks. Unknown, she says. Could be 4 months. Could be longer. He doesn't. Ask what happens if it goes wrong. Everyone in that room already knows the answer to that question, and saying it out loud would only embarrass them all. The target is a Taliban command cell operating out of Helmand province, specifically a mid-level logistics network tied to IED supply chains running from Quetta into the Sangin Valley. The CIA has been trying to penetrate this network for 3 years. 2 assets have already been burned. 1 is dead. The other wishes he were. What they need now is not another local asset with divided loyalties and a family to protect. They need someone who can go all the way in. Someone who doesn't exist. That's the job. Become someone who doesn't exist and make people who kill people for a living trust that person with their lives. He has 6 weeks. Camp Peary, known inside the agency simply as the farm, sits on 9,000 acres of Virginia woodland behind fences that don't appear on most maps. He'd done his basic training there 11 years ago. This time is different. This time the building they put him in has no windows, and the name on his file isn't his own. From that first morning, he is Tariq, not as an exercise, not as a practice run. Tariq, full stop. The trainers do not respond to his real name. His meals are delivered by people who call him Tariq. When he wakes up at 3 in the morning from a dream in which he is himself, his real self, his Maryland apartment, his sister's voice on the phone, he is required to write down every detail of that dream and hand it to the psychologist, who marks it, says nothing, and adds it to a file that grows thicker every week. The physical transformation takes the first 2 weeks. His diet is restructured not to make him thinner or stronger, but to make him look like a man who has lived the specific kind of hard life that Tariq is supposed to have lived. A displaced Kandahari, family killed in a strike outside Spin Boldak 4 years ago, drifted through Pakistan, picked up the faith harder than he'd carried it before, angry in the particular way that the Taliban finds useful. The trainers know this profile like a blueprint. They've built men inside it before. His Pashto is already good. He'd spent 2 years in Kandahar province as a case officer before this. But good is not the same as native, and native is not the same as Tariq's specific dialect, inflection, the particular rhythm of a man who grew up speaking it in the shadow of a specific mountain. They drill him on this for 4 hours a day, not just vocabulary, the pauses, the way Tariq would breathe before answering a question he found disrespectful, the way he'd hold eye contact, what he'd look away from, what he wouldn't. Dialect coaches, former Taliban fighters who've been turned, men who know how the vetting works because they ran it themselves once. The vetting, that's the word they keep returning to. Everything about Tariq's construction, his story, his body, his speech, his documented past has one purpose: to survive the vetting. The Taliban do not invite strangers into their networks. They build a file on you first. They find the gaps in your story. They test your reactions to things you're not supposed to know about. They watch how you pray. They watch how you eat. They watch how you look at other men. Surviving the vetting is not about giving the right answers. It's about being, so completely, a man who would naturally give those answers. The difference is total and it cannot be faked. The psychologist tells him this on day 9, sitting across from him in that windowless room, and she says it like a warning. You don't play, Tariq, she says. You have to find a way to let Tariq be real. Whatever Tariq feels, his grief, his anger, his faith, it has to come from somewhere genuine inside you, or they will see through it in the first hour. He sits with that for a long time. The grief is the easiest part, as it turns out. He doesn't have a dead family in Kandahar, but he has things he's lost, things he's filed away in the part of himself that field work teaches you to seal shut. He opens those files now, one by one, and he gives them to Tariq. He gives Tariq his own losses, and lets Tariq carry them as his own. A friend killed in Mosul in 2008. A marriage that ended because he was never fully present in it even when he was standing in the same room. A decision made in 2015 that he hasn't spoken about since. Tariq takes all of it. Tariq's anger is real because it's borrowed from something real. The faith is harder. He is not a religious man. He was raised without much of it and field work had done nothing to restore the gap. But Islam is not a costume. You cannot wear it badly inside a Taliban cell and survive. So he learns it the way Tariq would have learned it. The way a man learns something after catastrophe, reaching for structure in the wreckage, finding in the 5 prayers a rhythm that organizes grief into something bearable. By week 4, he is not performing the prayers. He is doing them. Whether that distinction means what he thinks it means is a question he doesn't examine too closely. The cover documentation arrives in week 5, a Pakistani CNIC card weathered perfectly, letters in Tariq's name. A photograph from 4 years ago, the face is his, but barely, the way 4 years of hard living would make it barely. A scar on his left hand that wasn't there when he arrived. The provenance of that scar is part of Tariq's story, and they've built the scar to match it. He reads the documentation over and over, until the facts of Tariq's life feel more immediate than his own. On the last night, the psychologist comes to see him. She asks him not for the file but genuinely, one human being to another, if he's ready. He thinks about it honestly. Ask me in 6 months, he says. She nods, like that's the right answer. At 4 in the morning on a Thursday in November, a vehicle drops him at a point 12 kilometers from the Afghan border. He has a canvas bag, a worn Quran with annotations in Tariq's handwriting, 2,000 Pakistani rupees, and nothing else. No weapon, no communication device that comes later. Through a dead drop 40 kilometers inside the border, if he can get to it. No tracker. The agency cannot be caught with a tracker on a man inside a Taliban cell. The political consequences alone would make the mission pointless. If something goes wrong, there is no cavalry. He stands at the side of the road for a moment after the vehicle leaves. The darkness here is complete. The kind that cities never manage. He can hear the wind moving through scrub brush and nothing else. He orients himself using a ridgeline he'd memorized from satellite imagery. He starts walking. He does not think about who he was an hour ago. That man is already gone. He has to be for this to work. For the next several months, however long it takes, however long he survives, there is only Tariq. A man from Kandahar with a dead family and a long memory, and nowhere left to go but forward, into the dark. The first 3 weeks inside the cell, no one tells him anything important. That's expected. It's the first layer of the vetting, the part that looks like nothing. He's introduced through a mid-level facilitator named Rashid as a man looking for purpose, which is the acceptable language for what he actually is, which is a man looking for a place in the network. They give him logistics work, moving supplies, counting things, sitting in rooms while other men talk and going quiet when the talk turns specific. He makes no effort to listen harder than he's supposed to. He makes no effort at all, which is the whole effort, appearing to be a man with no particular hunger for information. Because men who want information are dangerous, and Tariq is not supposed to be dangerous yet. He sleeps on a cot in a compound outside Musa Kala with 6 other men. He wakes before dawn for Fager. Says nothing that Tariq wouldn't say. He eats what they eat. He drinks the same tea, bitter and too sweet, from the same kind of scratched glass. He repairs a generator on the 4th day, without being asked, a skill that Tariq would have learned during years of making do, and this small thing moves him, quietly, from invisible to slightly visible. One of the men, Dodd, starts talking to him in the evenings. Not about the network, about his village, about the drought, about a cousin who'd gone to Germany and sent back money but no longer knew how to speak to the family properly when he called. Ordinary life in wartime, which is most of what wartime is. He likes Dodd. He notes this, files it away in the internal compartment where dangerous feelings go, and continues. The burst transmitter arrives through the dead drop at the end of week 2, a battered transistor radio with a modified battery housing. The device allows him to transmit compressed data bursts, a second or less in duration, at irregular intervals. Not enough signal for direction-finding equipment to lock onto in theory. In theory, he uses it for the first time crouched in the dark behind the compound wall at 2 in the morning, hands steady, the way they'd trained him, and he sends 6 seconds of encoded data back across a distance he can barely conceptualize, and waits to see if anything changes in the world around him. Nothing does. Either it worked or it didn't. He'll know by the dead drop response in 10 days. The second layer of the vetting comes in week 4. A man arrives at the compound older, no name given, beard going grey, the particular stillness of someone who has been doing this a long time and is no longer afraid of it. He asks Tariq to walk with him. They walk for an hour along the edge of a dry riverbed while the man talks, mostly, about theology and about the war and about what kind of man chooses to come here after losing everything. It is not an interrogation in any format. Tariq has been trained to resist, which is why it is an interrogation. Every answer he gives has been lived rather than rehearsed, and this is the only reason he passes it. The grief is real. The dislocation is real. The anger, Tariq's anger, which is his own anger wearing a different face, is real. The man walks him back to the compound and says nothing to anyone. And 3 days later, Tariq is moved to a different room with a better cot, and Rashid tells him, without ceremony, that he'll be attending a different kind of meeting from now on. The meetings are where the intelligence lives. Supply routes, names, the cell structure, not the whole network. Nobody knows the whole network, that's by design, but enough. He builds the picture piece by piece across weeks, the way the agency taught him, holding contradictory fragments in suspension until they resolve into geometry. He transmits in pieces, never everything at once, never in a pattern. He is meticulous about this, the way a surgeon is meticulous, because the consequences of being less than meticulous are identical. Someone dies on the table. He calls in his first drone strike at week 7. A vehicle, a specific vehicle, carrying a specific man, a logistics coordinator responsible for a supply line that has killed 11 coalition soldiers in 4 months. He transmits the coordinates. He waits. 3 days later, over tea, Daud mentions that a vehicle was hit on the road outside Jereshka. 5 men dead. He describes it with the particular flatness of a man who has heard many such things and no longer knows what to do with them. Tariq nods and says something appropriate and finishes his tea. What he doesn't say, what he cannot say, what he carries alone and will carry alone until he is someone else again, is that he had shared bread with one of those 5 men. A week before the strike, the man, he will not use his name, even in his own mind, because Tariq wouldn't know it, had offered him bread from his own portion without being asked, the way you do when you've been raised with a specific kind of generosity, and he'd accepted it. And they had sat together for 20 minutes in the kind of comfortable silence that only exists between people who are not afraid of each other. And then he had transmitted the coordinates, and now there is one less man in the world who offered bread without being asked. He does not allow himself to feel this fully. There is a compartment for it, and he puts it there, the way he's put everything else there, and he seals it and continues. But the compartment is getting heavy. The psychological unraveling is not dramatic. That's the thing nobody tells you. The movies make it a breakdown, a moment, a man staring at his reflection and failing to recognize it. The reality is quieter and more corrosive. It's simply that one morning he wakes up and reaches, as he does every morning, for Tariq, for the identity, the internal posture, the frame through which he filters every perception and reaction, and Tariq is simply there, without effort. There is no reaching anymore. Tariq has stopped being a thing he puts on and has become a thing he is. And somewhere underneath that, further down than he can easily access now, is the man who drove to Langley every morning and had a sister who called on Sundays. That man is still there, but Tariq is on top of him, dense and real and load-bearing. The extraction order comes through the dead drop in week 14, a date, a location, a signal, standard. He reads it, replaces it, walks back to the compound. He attends that evening's meeting. He eats dinner with Daud, who is telling a story about a goat his uncle owned that had an inexplicable fear of doorways. And Tariq laughs, genuinely laughs at the right moment in the story. And Daud grins, pleased, and pours more tea. In 4 days, this will be over. Daud will be a name in a report. The compound will be a grid coordinate in an archive somewhere. The man who shared bread will be a number in a casualty assessment. On the night before extraction, he lies on his cot and stares at the ceiling and tries, with the focused effort of a man trying to remember a language he's losing, to locate himself, the Maryland apartment, his sister's voice, the specific quality of light on the Langley campus on a cold November morning, the feelings these images are supposed to produce, the pull toward home, the relief of almost return. He finds the images, he assembles them correctly, but the feelings come from a distance now, like signals from a transmitter that's drifted slightly off frequency, there but degraded.